You sack me, Flint.
You know him?
So, I'm guessing this situation feels a little familiar.
Welcome back, G.I. Joe fans. Today, we're rolling back the clock to the time when Gen X was still young and green. And we're going to start off with just one word: Beret. Yup, this guy wore a tilted at the exact right angle, and he carried a shotgun low at his hip. This is the 1985 Flint Figure that we're talking about if you haven't seen it yet. But this was the thing at the time for those who weren't there to experience or collect it. Noticeable from a distance, and something that just visually looked different from the rest of the Joes placed beside him, Flint had a relaxed and composed look about him. It reeked of confidence from a man who knew the answers to things that most would still be struggling with. And along with the toy came a file card, which would only convince you even more that you needed to take this Flint toy home. Nevertheless, here's every version of Flint that we came across in media and comics, and every origin therein explored in one place just for you. It's going to be a great video, so let's go ahead and get into it.
You can never escape, Cobra! Never!
Who is Flint? Today, we've got the story of a Rhodes Scholar who decided to reject a ride to Oxford and instead enlisted in the army, but his intelligence was never compromised as a result. He was still the smartest as well as the toughest guy in most rooms. In fact, his strengths only got amplified despite him challenging his physical side more than his intellectual one. Today, Flint holds the rank of Warrant Officer, and this is one such position that may seem a bit odd when you consider the overall military hierarchy. It's a rank that neither makes him a commissioned officer nor an enlisted man. Rather, he's somewhere in between. We see this as a compliment so massive to his technical and tactical prowess that he couldn't even be ranked within the normal chain of command. Also, it's worth noting that you can only be specially and directly selected to be a warrant officer, since it's a position that doesn't have any climbing up to do. This is the case with Flint in every continuity he's in. He's always the leader, always the commander, and always the brain behind life and death decisions. But Flint has his share of tension in life too. One such tension is the technicality that, in the conventional sense, he does get outranked in the army by people who do far less than he does. That's one issue. The second is Lady J. She and Flint share a romantic bond that's constantly depicted throughout the entirety of the G.I. Joe franchise. This area of his life humanizes him a bit. However, some may argue, including us, that a few writers have taken their creative liberty into lazy territory by using this relationship to reduce Flint's effectiveness and his true potential. But otherwise, when in the hands of a well-written rendition, Lady J is given enough character to have the stage for herself, and not just become Flint's entire identity, who shapes his life's decisions. The Marvel Comics Kickstart. We pretty much have to start with Flint's run in the Marvel Comics, which went from 1985 to 94. The series actually started in 1982, about 2 years before Flint even showed up, but you can guess the kind of reception he eventually got. In terms of his character, he immediately sees himself becoming one of the most consistently used field operatives here, but Flint wasn't as high up in the resourcefulness department based on his responsibilities, especially when compared to Duke. That's because Duke, the protagonist, had to obviously carry the weight of the franchise on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Flint in the background was just being his competent self. He would show up, ace his missions, and then come back. However, Flint was seen as a reliable chap from the very beginning. The comic decided to dig further into that angle. He debuted in issue 37, which also saw us meet Lady J for the first time, and here we had Flint arriving in operation mode from the get-go, already in the field. Writer Larry Hama has a particular style where he often has newly introduced characters simply doing their job. Simple as that. Our first scene with Flint has him going after the twins, Tomax and Zaymot, on top of a roller coaster before he punches one of them, but it's felt by both due to their telepathic connection. It's a pretty wild opening scene. Then, in the same run, Flint also takes part in one of the largest story events in this continuity in the Cobra Island arc, where he leads elements of the Springfield infiltration. This was the team's deep cover operation inside Cobra's model American town. Then, Flint's relationship with Lady J is laid out for the first time, but Hama doesn't over-dramatize it in the beginning, as they're shown as two professionals who happen to be something a little more. And that's all the comics had to say on that. Another important arc for Flint was the Trucial Abysmia arc, where he flew to the Middle East. This phase had some genuinely uneasy political themes to it for a comic made in the 1980s. After this mission came one of his most notable moments that made it worthy of a spotlight. We're talking about the time Flint led Beachhead, as well as Lady J, In the Special Missions backup story, in G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero issue 50, by infiltrating a flight hijacked by terrorists. And what was the result? Every adversary was neutralized, wiped out, just like that. Later on in his Marvel run, he also had missions with the October Guard, which solidified his character, as well as his role on the team. His final appearances had him in the field until the very end, when the series closed out at issue number 155. But Flint's story was still just beginning, and you'll understand why we say that as we move on to his next few runs. The British Action Force series. In this UK-exclusive comics run, we start off by having Flint placed as one of the more prominent Joes, and he most definitely proved why he deserved to be placed at the forefront with his objectives here, such as leading the rescue team in European Missions number 9 and the Amsterdam weaponsmith story, where CoverGirl is captured, and it's Flint who's tasked with commanding her extraction, which he does like a true leader. Once CoverGirl's safe, she gets her hands on the stonecutter and destroys the weaponsmith's base. It's safe to say that Flint understands his role pretty well, since being a leader, his job is to lead the mission and not finish it. It's important to understand that this self-imposed strictness with what his goals are happens to be a part of his character, much more responsibility-driven and clearly mature.
Keep kicking Snake! We've got him on the run!
The legendary Sunbow series. Then, after that, comes the chapter of Flint's lore where we saw the most out of his character. The Sunbow animated series is where most audiences know Flint from in the first place. His character had numerous adventures across this timeline, which meant more screen time, more personality, and a more developed character, as well as an actual relationship arc. And it's not like he was the lead protagonist or anything, with the story revolving around him. He's just one of the leads, alongside Duke and Scarlet. But this is what makes it so fascinating to have such a profound set of storylines for it. Now, Flint is voiced by Bill Ratner across the bulk of the Sunbow run and the 1987 animated movie, and this longevity resulted in him appearing more than any other Joe, yet again. But who is he as a character in the Sunbow series, and what will we consider his magnum opus run? Well, the base is the same, with him being the field commander who showcases his power through his authority with little to no effort. There are some creative tweaks and some really crazy adventures with this run that directly impact certain key aspects of Flint's life and his missions. His relationship with Lady J, quite directly portrayed, is at its most prominent. Then, there's the 1985 miniseries titled The Pyramid of Darkness within the Sunbow series, where he leads the Joes against Cobra's plan to create a global blackout. Two of Flint's most significant stories in the Sunbow series include There's No Place Like Springfield, Parts 1 and 2, and Flint's Vacation, both from Season 2. These episodes are essential viewing to really understand the kind of determination and allegiance that Flint has for his responsibilities that drives his character throughout this run. Then comes the movie, which we simply can't skip past. In 1987, G.I. Joe the movie places Flint in a much more prominent position within the team alongside Falcon. And he also has the Lady J angle present on the side for a good chunk of the film. However, and don't get us wrong, while we absolutely love the Sunbow run, a teeny tiny bit of criticism from our end would be that Flint's background didn't really get much coverage or even an interpretation. They didn't have to construct a fresh new backstory for him, but a reference to his early days as a Rhodes Scholar or a warrant officer would have helped to develop his character a lot more and provided some reasoning for his actions. Nevertheless, that doesn't change the importance of the Sunbow series in the grander scheme of things, in this case, cementing Flint as one of the most iconic G.I. Joe characters. The Mediocre Years. Following the Sunbow series, we got the Deke animated series from 1989 onwards, and this is a phase we'd consider lukewarm for Flint. His role is reduced, and in fact, he's often sidelined and overshadowed, and that's kinda all there is to say about this one, since they wrapped it up in 1991. In the aftermath, it was almost a drought for Flint, but in 2001, with the Devil's Due publishing run, which directly picked things up from where the Marvel run ended, Flint was being back to his old self, an ever-reliable field operative with his ongoing romance with Lady J as a key part of his character. But just like the Deke series, this didn't have much to give. That is, except for one particular story where he's a part of the Joe team, which goes underground when the team is disbanded in the early Devil's Due arcs. His professionalism was really on display here, and he had enough room to let his character shine by itself in an otherwise pretty tame run for Flint throughout the series. IDW's Flint Revival, Parts 1 and 2. After these two timid interpretations, we saw a bit of a bounce back for Flint. We call this the IDW publishing era, and this one had two different continuities to explore. The first and original continuity, which goes from 2008 to 2016, had Flint assigned as a field agent who conducted operations under Joe Colton after G.I. Joe went public. There's nothing in particular that seems like an addition or a variation to Flint's character from what we'd already seen in the Marvel and Devil's Due interpretations. He might have gotten a little bit more spotlight than the previous two versions, and even a slightly more mature dynamic with Lady J, where they talk about feelings and priorities. But that's about it when it comes to the original timeline of the IDW publishing era. Now, moving on to the second continuity under the same umbrella, we have the exciting return of Larry Hama in 2010, who gets right back into continuing his own Marvel story right away. He totally ignores Devil's Due and IDW's original continuity, which we kind of consider to be potholes in Flint's journey as a character. Hama coming back is really important to bring the character back to his roots, which made him so beloved in the first place. If you include this continuity, it makes Larry Hama's collective run span more than 40 years with this character, the longest continuous version of the character in any media ever. And Flint's pretty much there throughout, but he doesn't get a major reinvention as such. He apparently didn't need one because he powered through with his consistency in every storyline he was a part of. This only resulted in emboldening his already established core traits even more so. The finale of this series came in issue number 300, which also marked Flint's final appearance in the entire Larry Hama run, bookending his legendary 40-year legacy.
You nuked Siberia and all you got was a limp? Funny.
Flint's TV interpretation. For this next section, we present to you the 2009 G.I. Joe Resolute TV series, and this version of Flint showcases arguably some of his strongest moments ever, at least in the animated space. As a field commander, this version has Flint in a much grittier light than usual, as he operates in a world where millions have died at the hands of Cobra Commander, and even more suffer every day. We consider this a rather modern way to portray Flint, since there are serious real-world consequences of the wrath that he and the Joes face. The unusual brilliance of Renegades. The following year, 2010, brought G.I. Joe's Renegades, where things took quite a turn. This was also a notable exception, where Flint was reimagined as a first lieutenant rather than a warrant officer. Shockingly, Flint is on the wrong side of the main Joe team for the majority of the series. As a believer in the system, he decides to hunt down those from Duke's team who have been branded fugitives by the military establishment. He's wrong, but sadly he doesn't learn that until later on. However, this was a brilliant change to his character and one that made Renegade Flint the most morally ambiguous version of the character we'd ever seen. We see debates and conflicts over principles in real time over what each side believes is right and what's wrong. Amazingly, that doesn't make Flint the villain in any way, since he's still the same guy who believes in good over evil. It's all about perspective here, and here's the icing on top. He still has a relationship with Lady J, which means that he's hunting a team that has a woman he cares about deeply only because of his allegiance to a system he serves. Now, that's genuinely good writing. It's a compelling arc for Flint, and one we recommend you check out if you care about the character. The oddball Flint in Retaliation. In 2013, there was a live-action attempt with the film called Retaliation, which presented Flint a little differently. He was a loner and also a show-off played by DJ Katrona. On a mission to extract a North Korean defector, he breaks away from the group only to place a G.I. Joe flag on top of the guard's watchtower after replacing the one that was on there before. This prank turned things south as they nearly got killed because of it. Flint had his head held underwater by Roadblock to convince him to start taking things seriously. This is a side of Flint that we never really saw in the comics or cartoons, and personally speaking, not one that I'm the biggest fan of. Flint as a rookie just doesn't sit well with us, but I am glad we got a tried and tested version of him that way so that we could make up our minds for sure. Flint after the Larry Hama run. After 2022, there was a change in rhythm in store for Flint. The man had a legacy to earn in the post-Hama era, and it started with the Skybound Entertainment Energon universe in 2023. This comic is still ongoing, time of recording, and we classify it as part of the new Flint era in an already renewed G.I. Joe world. In this story, Flint doesn't stay on the sidelines. He debuted in May of 2024 alongside Lady J in the Energon Universe Special 2024 number 1. In the story, he's assigned the task of building a separate Special Forces team meant to run parallel to Duke's G.I. Joe initiative. From the get-go, we understand that he's not a part of the existing syndicate and is rather getting orders from the ground up. And this premise, in this continuity, was fresh to watch as we saw him and Lady J run their own operations for the majority of their involvement in the series. As we mentioned, this series is still ongoing, so we expect more interesting stories and plot lines to thrill fans, and we're eagerly awaiting those. Sadly, that kind of wraps it up for the entire timeline of Flint appearances, from his initial introduction to his ongoing current-day roles. So where does that leave the ever-rebellious Warrant Officer Flint? Well, he's a man who picks his battles, be it in life or in the field, and refuses to let that battle intimidate him in the slightest. That's why we believe that if you really want to understand the psyche of a character like Flint, take a look at his choices, not his ranks or achievements. That's because his choices make him who he is, and these choices only went on to shape and strengthen his ideology. And that's our video for today. We hope you had a great time with this one as we covered Flint's entire career across the G.I. Joe universe, across different iterations and interpretations. If you enjoyed this one, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and let us know your thoughts on Flint in the comments section down below.